Do you think time is money?
Absolutely. Now, in the Financial Fitness Academy, we have a provision. We say 20% of your take-home income should be dedicated to future financial goals. If you look at where people are taking their kids to school, it's not just about preferences.
Yeah.
It's about being realistic.
Yeah.
You take your children to a school you can afford, because I guess the only thing worse than having great dreams for your children is having them kicked out of school and sent home because their fees aren't paid.
Yeah.
A lot of people get money in their hands before they get the wisdom and the knowledge about how to manage it. When you have more money, it may mask the fact that you are technically living beyond your means, but you've been able to cover up the
You can afford
shortfalls.
to. It is possible to live a complete life without financial loss.
I do. I am.
Is it complete?
Without financial loss?
Yeah.
Absolutely. What are you in search of, Barack? Is it
No,
pay?
we've been having a really good conversation, and this is Kingori Gathinji, who's the head of investment and financial fitness at Stanbic Bank. I hope I got that correct.
You have.
I did, right?
Thank you.
Welcome to Financially Incorrect.
Thank you, Barack.
Yeah.
It's a real privilege, let me say, to be here. And you're doing great work. You and the team, you're doing good stuff.
I think you're one of the first people who've come to the podcast who haven't talked about how small this space is. Everybody who comes in, like, that's the first comment, like, this is so small. It looks so much bigger on screen.
And that tells you that I haven't done many podcasts. So this for me is optimum, and I'm happy.
It works. Okay, all right. I have a question for you that's off topic, so to speak. This morning I was driving at around 8 a.m. as I just come from dropping my kids in school. I was driving back home, and there were all these guys in traffic, right? And I was trying to think to myself, because I despise traffic. I would do anything to not be in traffic. I'll take a longer route, anything. So I was thinking to myself, is it that everybody who's in traffic has woken up late that morning, or is it that people generally don't mind being in traffic? What do you think?
It's funny you say that, because it's reassuring for me to realize I'm not the first person to judge other people for being in traffic when I'm in traffic with them.
Yeah.
I've always just thought about it in terms of man hours and how much time we're spending on the road. But I suppose to think about it a bit more philosophically, I think you tend to find there's a 5 a.m. club you hear about. There's people who never see traffic. And when you realize how much time you spend in traffic, especially if you aren't able to make it productive, spend time with your kids or listen to a podcast, I think you're probably losing out. So I'd like to say I'm pretty proud of the fact that I don't get caught in traffic as much anymore.
But what do you think? Do you think that, like, people wake up, like, every day, you know, there's traffic every single day.
Yeah.
So on Monday, it's a cohort of guys who've woken up late. And on Tuesday, it's yet another cohort of guys who've woken up late. Or there are people who, like, say, I'll be in traffic for an hour and a half, and, you know.
I think we're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
I think people are doing what's worked yesterday, what will hopefully work tomorrow, and they're moving with the herd. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about the herd when we talk about investments.
Yeah.
But I think creatures of habit doing what's worked in the past and maybe not willing or interested in changing their practice.
Okay.
We like familiarity.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Interesting. I don't know. I think I'd like to think that it's people who have woken up late every day. Like, it's a different cohort of people who've woken up late every day that get stuck in traffic. That's the only way it makes sense to me. I cannot believe that there are people who just don't mind unless you have a driver and you're sitting in the back and, like, you're working. But anyway. All right. Let's move. My second question, still a little philosophical, but more money-oriented. Do you think time is money?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, whenever we kick off our financial fitness academies, and in this part of the world, very often we kick them off slightly after the advertised time. I like to start by telling people that time is money. And I think from very many perspectives, when you look at the value of just time, whether it's in an investment, whether it's in starting an insurance policy earlier rather than later, which is a function of time, whether it's simply being patient about an investment in any different asset class, time comes back in. And time, they do say, is that one commodity that no matter how much money you make, no matter how lucky you are, you will never be able to create time. So time is money, and probably many more things as well.
Yeah. What's your favorite money saying as a money educator? I guess. What's your favorite money saying?
I like the ring. Okay, I think it helps to quote, and I'll tell you, I have a fear sometimes about the number of billionaires and millionaires we quote when we're talking about money, because it can make it a little unrelatable, or it can sort of like put our dreams up right there with it. It's about making a lot of money. And one of the points, and once again, I really want to commend what you're doing in driving financial literacy through conversations with, I'd like to say, mostly normal people who are trying their best to make the most of what they have, is it needs to be relatable. So I'm going to give you a quote, and the quote comes from Warren Buffett, and he says, the first rule in investing is never lose money. And the second rule is to refer to the first rule, never lose money. I think it's a timeless truth. It's harder, easier said than done, but I found, especially given what we spoke about earlier, it's probably something that I should keep quite close. Never lose money.
Never lose money. Okay. I probably haven't read enough around Warren Buffett. I haven't had that quote before, but interesting. Okay. So as I guess head of financial fitness at Stanbic, what does your typical day look like? What did you get up to today?
So my first session actually was with people who are interested in improving their knowledge around finances, investment, insurance, and just their personal finances and how they manage their money. So we ran a session for the Financial Fitness Academy with one of our partners, and that would be something I would do, say, every other week, along with the team that run that program. But I also look after investments within the bank. So when you work in investments and you're looking after client investments portfolios, you very often want to look at the markets, see what's happened overnight, see where the market was headed today, yesterday, how are we waking up this morning. So yeah, my typical day would often be to get a sense of what the market is looking like, both internationally as well as locally, because the two are connected. And then I'll try and get in touch with my clients. Very often you have orders coming in, people looking to take a position in the market. So very recently in Kenya, we've had an interest rate cut. So people are asking themselves, what does that mean for my investments? Should I take advantage? Should I lock in something? So we'll have those conversations, do an FFA like we did today, and then this is a slightly different day. I'm here now with you to talk to your audience.
The audience, yeah, okay. So what does FFA stand for?
FFA stands for Financial Fitness Academy.
Okay.
And it's a proprietary financial literacy and empowerment program run by the Standard Bank Group across our footprint, and here in Kenya is Stanbic Bank Kenya.
Okay. So I guess with some of the work that you've done under that, what would you say is the percentage of financial literate people, maybe specifically in Kenya?
So the numbers concern, I think, most of the people who look at them. I think if you look at official statistics, you're talking about, if we can speak in positive terms, about 30% of the population are considered financially literate, which does unfortunately mean you're talking about 60, 70% of the population who are still looking to acquire certain knowledge around matters finance. But I think if you dig into those numbers and really question what financial literacy is really all about, is it just about knowing what to do or being able to actually action those ideas? I think the numbers actually go higher. And I would actually put it at about 10 to 20% of people have the knowledge and are acting on it. And the vast majority aren't in a position to really optimize their financial journeys.
Okay. Have you guys done any research into what the friction or hesitance is between people knowing and acting and, and in doing the right things in, I guess, trying to be more financially literate?
So when we recently launched a new product, and I know I'm not here to talk about products specifically,
right,
but before we went to the market with our new asset management offering, we actually carried out a survey. And the findings were quite interesting. When we asked random members of the public, clients of the bank, what are you looking for when it comes to an investment? Some talked about return, some talked about a trustworthy partner, so they want a safe investment. Some talked about liquidity, and those are some like the three key themes we saw playing out. So when you look at, and nothing happens in a vacuum, when you look at the broader macroeconomic context of Kenya, we are hustling. People are struggling to put food on the table, to deal with their basics. And whether you think about it in terms of just a hierarchy of needs, investments have tended to be and matters of financial literacy, not just investments. So you talk about insurance, effective borrowing, leveraging access to credit, have tended to be seen as a luxury, something that the rich do, something that I'll do when I get to a certain point in time. And there's a chicken and egg about that, because sometimes if you don't access credit and use it in an effective way, it might take you longer to self-actualize financially. So I think those are some of the practical reasons that you're hearing from people saying, I just don't think I have the money to be able to start doing some of these things. And I think the challenge is put to us as financial market intermediaries to then lower the levels of access. And we think we've been able to do that with our recent asset management offering.
Okay, so it has a lower barrier to entry.
It does.
What is it?
It does. You can actually begin to invest collectively with other investors in the money market fund in Kenya shillings for 1,000 shillings, which is still not as cheap as perhaps some people would want it to be, but we believe it's within reach for most people to aspire to work towards, get 1,000 shillings and start working with a professional fund manager looking after your money.
Okay. What do you think needs to happen to expedite the financial offerings in our market? I know, and this is piggybacking off the conversation we had beforehand, and I'm asking for the people who are, I guess, further along their financially literate journeys and would need better options, would need insurances to start giving cash back, or would need to get other options other than, money market funds, and looking at other things that you can invest in and saying, this will give me 20-25% return or whatever percentages. What do you think needs to happen for you guys in the banking industry to give us better solutions?
First of all, I think many things are happening. I think what you're doing here at Financially Incorrect, what many people are doing in the financial literacy space, including some of the regulator entities, the Capital Markets Authority, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, I think it all goes into that. I think even as recently as the education system beginning to talk about the need to incorporate elements of financial education and financial literacy in the curriculum, it all works together to build or grow the pie. And I think for us as market practitioners, we see our role as to collaborate with other market professionals to grow the pie, get more people interested in investing, get more people to invest at their local stock exchange, more people to invest in lending to the government through government bonds, put money into money market funds. And when you build a critical mass, and I think in any industry, in any business, you're looking for a critical mass of buyers, a critical mass of customers, it then prompts the sort of innovations that you're talking about. If you look at some of the more innovative financial offerings in our market, take an example of M-Pesa, they're able to innovate off the back of, 25 million subscribers plus? When you have that sort of audience, you will be able to do more, invest more, knowing that there's an audience that's ready to take up the product. So I'll share with you a number that motivates us that the work is not yet done. When you talk about insurance penetration, insurance penetration in Kenya is estimated at 3%. And when you talk about estimates, it could be lower. That's 3% of the risks that ought to be covered in this market by insurance solutions are being covered, and the vast 97% are naked risks, as we call them. So we think we need more interventions, we need more education, we need more people to come into the net, and then you will see the solutions begin to respond to that critical mass.
Okay. Interesting. You sound very passionate about, I guess, financial literacy and the finance space as a whole. Were you, and to quote, actually, maybe I won't quote that song, but were you, where did you get the innate sense for finance? Was it something that, did you grow up in a household where finance was generally talked about, or is it something you picked up a lot later in your life?
So, not giving away my age, but I grew up in the age where all you heard about money was that it doesn't grow on trees.
Right.
That was as much as you needed to know, especially when you weren't making it yourself. But I was fortunate. My parents are professionals in different fields, in medicine and finance. So at a very early age, I was exposed, especially because of what my dad's an accountant. So I guess you get to understand what accountants do. At an early stage, you believe they're counting money. Later on, you get to understand in more detail what they're doing. So I was exposed to the idea of money. Money is an interesting subject. So anytime I read the newspaper, I would be drawn to stories that had millions in them or talked about magnates and tycoons and billions of shillings or dollars. So my interest was piqued in that way. My entry into the actual industry was not via formal training. So my background is in law. So really everything that I've done, and I've been in this industry now for 20 years, is driven, if you like, by that interest, which I have now built over having worked with different players in the market. But it's mostly driven, I think, by the passion and the interest. And I think money is a very interesting subject.
Okay. What's the biggest lesson you think you got from your parents around money?
They would tell you I still need to pick up a couple. When we interact, I think they feel I am an incomplete work. My dad especially.
As a financial educator, that's saying something.
That's saying something.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be a bit vulnerable.
Okay.
Hopefully that makes me a bit more relatable.
Yeah.
You walk around as the head of investments or an investment manager, and perhaps it suggests that you've figured it all out. You've learned all your lessons. I haven't, but I will tell you what I've picked up from my parents, and I'd say their generation. I've been very privileged, both in terms of personal relationships and our customers. And I really must send a shout out to all the people who have ever invited me into a conversation about their wealth journey. And the lesson I've learned that I am still trying to master is the lesson of patience. I don't know where it happened. I don't know if I fell on my head, and I actually have a story of falling on my head as a young child. But I became impatient. I wanted quick results, quick outcomes, and I'm aware that I don't suffer alone. I think there's a generation that's grown up believing that when it comes to money, when it comes to success, when it comes to investments, general endeavors in life, that there is a route or there is a secret to being able to do it fast. And I don't think that is the case. I think it can happen quickly, and we call it luck, and you don't fault your own luck. But I think the reality is that it takes time. Good things take time. Investments require time. Time in the market is a phrase we've also adopted. So my lesson from that generation, from my parents, is be patient. It will take time. And if you're lucky and you're given that time, you will see a good result for your effort.
Okay. So were your parents able to build wealth over time? Is that something that you've seen for yourself?
They were. And I do want to give them their credit. I think they worked very hard. People say that my parents' generation, and I don't have a label for them, like we're going around saying Gen Z, then this. They may be the silent generation or what, but I think that generation has seen, much as we are living in the digital and the information age now, their generation has seen the greatest transformation. When you look at the lives they grew up in to the lives they've been able to give us, their children, they've seen the most progress, the most change. So I take my hat off to them. I think they've been a very resilient generation. They've been a very adaptable generation. And I think these are all lessons that emerging generations need to be much more open to learning from. And I found some of my greatest lessons come from simply sitting at their feet and understanding, okay, how long did it take to do this? How have you moved from A to B? And in the case of my parents, without putting them on anyone's radar, I think they've done very well by their own standards, and they are now enjoying a version of their retirement, but still very active.
Right. Okay. So where do you end up going to? Where do you end up going to school? What kind of environment did you grow up in?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I know from your bio that you ended up pursuing a law degree. So how did you end up doing that? How did you end up pursuing law?
All right. Now, I told you, whenever I talk about the law, I'm very careful.
Yes.
About who I am around and
who's... almost, yes.
And now Justin's actually recording what we're saying. I ended up studying law because I thought it would open me up to other opportunities. Now, these are not things you can tell a parent who's about to put down money for your university school fees. But I think that was actually the appeal, that as I went through my education and I studied here locally, I am a product of local education systems that I must say I think do stand up to scrutiny. So I'm an 844 product. If I perhaps answer a question like this, 4 options and I'm choosing one of them, that's how I grew up. But it also opened you up to so many different things. I mean, you studied this, you studied a little bit of that. And I think as I went along, I found I had varied interests. And when I looked at what could I study that would resonate with this desire to know a little bit about this, a little bit about that, law stood out for me because you can, in law, as you well know, Barack, you can decide that you're going to specialize in intellectual property, you could go into conveyancing. We all thought we should go into criminal law until we discovered that criminals don't always pay their bills, and you might want to be careful about that.
Right.
But that's why I ended up in law. I thought it would give me a platform. I was convinced. My parents are both degree holders and graduates that it was a necessary skill to be able to have, that you have a degree. And I studied law abroad, but was always looking to come back and see how I could apply it. And as soon as I came back, I began to apply it in different ways. So in that sense, it did work out.
Okay. Was the financial investment that your parents made for you to, study abroad, was it always apparent to you? Did you feel like it was either a chip on your shoulder or something that you needed to then, sort of work harder to prove them wrong? And what were the costs like for, to be able to study abroad at that, I was going to say at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was a different time.
It was a different time.
Finish your question.
It was a different time. Yeah.
It was prohibitive. I mean, it does place a lot of pressure on you. Did I feel the sacrifice? Yes, I did. I'm one of 5 siblings. We are fairly close in age. So these hits kept on coming for my parents, and they were committed to giving us the best education they could. They viewed education as an investment in us, and I cannot thank them enough, because I do everything I am, or a big part of who I am is because not just of what they did at higher education level, but just the schools I went to. I went to good schools locally, like I said, in the local system.
Were you in Alliance?
It might be said, but you're putting me. I might start getting Salimi.
You have an alliance cohort seated over there. That's why I'm asking.
I see.
Yeah.
It's all coming out.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm not ashamed at all.
Yeah.
It's a great school, and yes, I did go to that school.
Yeah.
I went to that school and I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, and I credit it all. I was actually second generation in that school. My dad went to that school as well, so you can see their influence
Lineage there.
was far-reaching, and it's allowed me to get to where I am today.
Okay, so but do you have a context now of how much it would have cost for you to study law abroad? And you were in the UK, right?
I was in the UK, and the pound has always been the mighty pound. It wasn't 170 to the shilling like it was today, but it was significant. So I think you're talking an education that's in the tens of thousands of pounds a year, the low tens of thousands, before you think anything too much. I mean, we're talking about 10 to 20,000 pounds a year, and you're talking about 3 years in university. I studied 1 year. I think I tried to give back a little bit. I studied on an exchange program across Europe. And across Europe, actually, they do subsidize education, and I got to benefit from that. But I do want to say a few things that I think my formative education really is what gave me the confidence that I even rely on today. And it's the primary schools and the places we went to, yeah.
Okay. I want to ask you a question, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to look at you in 2 different spaces, you now and I guess maybe even more so your parents, right?
Yeah.
So if your parents come, in a warped society or warped world, come to you X years before they have their 5 kids, and they tell you, as a Stanbic head of financial fitness and head of investments, come and tell you, so we plan to have 5 children, and we want to take all of them to the UK, right? After they've finished, assuming that they finish at 18.
Yes.
Do you have products that would have helped them make that happen?
That's a really good question. Hypothetical, but really good question. And it speaks to situations we find ourselves in today. And it speaks to having a plan.
Yeah.
Do you have a plan for the life that you desire to live? When we run people through the FFA, ultimately what we're trying to do, and I think this is, if I was to explain why we adopted the word fitness rather than just literacy, it's knowledge that is in action. It's knowledge that's applied. So, like I said, I work with colleagues in insurance, and you've got insurance education plans that penetration is low, not enough people are taking them up, but are an excellent way to save towards something you know that's going to happen. You have children, you expect that they're going to get educated. As long as you're clear about where it's going to happen, you can actually work backwards. And there's a lot of freedom in actually saying, this is where I expect it's going to cost me. How much do I need to begin to save towards that? What sort of premium do I need to work towards building? And I can tell you, I know for a fact, my parents simply worked as hard as they could. And thankfully, they were able to achieve many of the dreams they had. But I think with the advancements we now have, the insights we have into markets, there are more certain ways to work towards those goals today. And they include being able to break it down. And I think when you break it down, and we're saying this for whatever goal you have, it could be the education of your children, it could be owning a home, it could be financial independence, break it down. Because I think what puts off a lot of people, Barack, for making long-term financial plans is they're daunting. You think to yourself, when will I have 5 million shillings, 10 million shillings? You probably will never have it all at once when it matters, but you can work towards it. So we're really big on helping people break things down into plans, insurance premiums that can be paid monthly or quarterly that can be matched to your income, even if you're in business, in case you're not employed. And those are the discussions we're having today with my parents of today. And it's what I would have told them 30, 40 years ago if we sat down.
Yeah. So do you guys have a specific product that like works?
We do. So we have a product called a Summer Plan.
Okay.
Summer Plan is a product that we have. It's underwritten by Liberty Life. We're part of the Standard Bank group. So Liberty Life, I see where you are taking me. And thank you for giving me permission to talk about our product.
No, I'm genuinely curious because I'm let's do the math. And I want us to do the math. I have my colleagues who we were forever calculating things with, and we can do the math and see what actually it would cost.
So if we're talking maths, let's talk with numbers.
Yeah, let's talk numbers.
Let's talk numbers.
So 5 kids.
So you've got 5 kids. Like I said, it's a bold goal when you have 5 kids to say that you're going to take them all of them to university abroad. And in the case of my family, it wasn't all 4 of us. It wasn't all 5 who went abroad. It ended up being the ones, 4 of us went abroad. So there's 2 approaches to it.
Okay.
You can save towards it, and you can pay an insurance premium towards it. Let me start with saving towards it. 10% for me is a magical number when it comes to investments. If you can earn a return of 10% on an investment, that's a good investment, I'd say, in any currency, in Kenya shillings, in US dollars. So you start off with an amount that you can commit. So we said you're trying to raise 5 million shillings. You ask yourself, when are the kids going? And you've got 12-year-old, 10-year-old. So you give yourself time. We found that fixed income products are one of the best ways to do it. And a good example is government bonds. That you literally say to yourself, I'm going to begin to invest the amount. So you break it down, 5 million, let's say 5 years. So it's about 1 million shillings a year that you need to be putting away. And then you have to be a bit realistic. How much are you earning? How much are you earning that you're able to put aside? Are you going to compromise on your living now so that you can achieve that particular goal? Now, in the Financial Fitness Academy, we have a provision. We say 20% of your take-home income should be dedicated to future financial goals. For the purpose of this particular calculation, let's say that future financial goal is the education of your children. So 20% of your income needs to be contributing to what? To a contribution to a fixed income bond of about 1 million shillings a year. Let's say you do it every month, you break it down. Now we're testing our quick maths. You're saying...
Collins has my calculator there.
So let's say you're doing about 90,000.
A month.
Now 90,000 is 20%. If you say education is your big goal, I always wanted to give my kids a good education. If 90,000 is 20% of your income, it means your take-home income is about 450,000.
Right.
Colin stopped me where I begin to preach a false doctrine. So we're about 500,000 shillings. So we're saying if you earn 500,000 shillings net, it is a realistic goal that with about 5 to 10 years in terms of a runway towards that goal, you can begin to put aside 20%, say 100,000 for the purpose of our calculation every month. But it doesn't stop there. And this is where the good savers, now we're talking about people like a lot of ladies are good savers, but not very good at investing. a little risk averse, because you need that 100,000 shillings on average that you're putting in monthly to begin to earn a return. So that it's not just you working to take your kids to university, it's your money working for you. So you've got your 90,000, 100,000, you're putting that aside every month, you're putting into your investment. Before you get the lump sum that you can put it into a bond, you can put it into a money market fund like we just launched. You're earning actually more than that at about 14%. And these things begin to work together. So we're saying about 100,000 a month put into a savings investment that you then compound at least twice a year, like you can do with a government investment. Keep it intact, and then you're working towards that 5-year goal. When you have your lump sum, you can begin that journey. And remember, 5 million would probably be required over a period of 2 to 3 years. And then you can talk about continuing to invest it even once you have the lump sum. Does that sound a way like you could get there?
I mean, it sounds like it theoretically, because it also means if you have 5 kids, you're putting away 500,000 a month. You know, which is a huge sum. Like, that's not a little money.
This is all relative.
Yeah, of course. You want your kids to go to the UK. Yeah,
I like to say, if you look at where people are taking their kids to school, it's not just about preference. It's about being realistic.
Yeah,
you take your children to a school you can afford, because I guess the only thing worse than having great dreams for your children is having them kicked out of school and sent home because their fees aren't paid.
Yeah.
So you cut your coat according to your cloth. University, higher education abroad, I would say, is not only not everybody's dream, it isn't even necessarily necessary.
Yeah.
We have some pretty good academic institutions locally, and if you're lucky, the government will pay for it rather than yourself.
Okay, all right. So I guess you've said you have a product for your parents when they're starting out to look at getting their 5 kids go to the UK. All right. So you go, you study. You study your law degree. You come back. What happens then? And how are you handling money as you're in the UK? Do you have a good budgetary plan? Are you spending more than you can, more than you have? Are you calling back to ask for more money? Do you have to get a job to keep your life going? Yeah,
all of the above, except the nice things, that you said.
Right.
I think for me, it was my first job came while I was in university. So if you like, my first salary, to the extent that one was allowed to work while you're at university, came then. And I don't know if you've met anybody yet who spent their first salary wisely. I am yet to meet a person who did. I think it's a shot of adrenaline and it's money in your pocket.
Right.
And it was consumed at a rapid rate. And so were the next few paychecks. But in fairness, it did help to soften the blow in terms of the upkeep for my time there. Obviously, the laws or the regulations require that your tuition be paid up front, just so you're focused on that. But a lot about where you live, what you eat, your leisure, if you have it, would either be curtailed by what pocket money you got or what you're able to work towards. And that was my motivation. I did desire to live a certain kind of life. I worked towards it, and it was very exciting. But like many people, and this is something we're seeing much more with the financial fitness story and literacy generally, a lot of people get money in their hands before they get the wisdom and the knowledge about how to manage it. And I was one of those people. So I was getting the money, but I certainly wasn't thinking long term. I wasn't thinking mostly about saving it. I said to myself, I'm a student, I shouldn't even be making money anyway.
Right.
Why not spend it? In hindsight, I probably should have saved more of it or at least done a few different things with it. But it was a good feeling, and it certainly did establish in me the desire to work and the connection between working for money and not getting things for free. But it was a good experience, and it was in foreign currency. So since that time and to date, I have leaning towards, even in investments, to invest in hard currency.
Okay. I have a question for you on that side, for you as a professional. I feel like I haven't met a person between that 18 to, I want to say 22, 24 period where they've been in uni. And of course, this is someone now probably in their 30s and they're looking back and they're like, oh my gosh, I wasted so much money in uni, because whether it was earning pocket money, whether it was earning, I don't know, whatever the case is. And it feels like a consistent story that, I guess you hear every so often. So I'm asking this as a banking professional.
Yes.
What's stopping you guys from having, I'll just say, a better product for people within that demographic where, we wouldn't have less stories about people saying, I wish I knew I would have had so much more money than I have now if I had done better with my money in uni.
I think it's a challenge and a question. Let me tell you about my first bank account, and maybe it will tell you a little bit about the disconnect we're having. So back when I was growing up, I think banks were trying, and they would have kid accounts, and you could open a kid account
Jumbo
and get a
Juniors
and the like.
Yeah.
Now, one bank, and I won't say who they are, but I will unequivocally say it's not Stanbic Bank, who sent me here today. Opened an account for me, and it was great. And this is before I turned 18. And I had a bank account, and I could access that bank account. And they even gave me an ATM, which was even better, because back then an ATM was as close to technology in banking as you could get. Now that bank, and we can talk about that bank after we stop going, closed my account due to inactivity and not being able to maintain a minimum balance at some point. And they scarred me, I'd like to say. And I think it illustrates the challenge for banks and other financial institutions in balancing the need to develop and to grow a market and the need to be viable. The truth is, banks do need people to fund their account and carry out transactions in order to be able to pay the bills, to be in different markets and in different locations. Clearly, what that bank was telling me indirectly was, if we had many more customers like you, we might go out of business. So we're going to close your account so we don't have to service you and your dreams of one day having money. And I think that message that I'm not yet ready for the financial system kind of sticks with you for a little bit. And I think increasingly the challenge being taken up by banks like Stanbic Bank is, when we talk Financial Fitness Academy, it just can't be for working professionals. So we've done financial fitness academies for working professionals. We've done it for people approaching retirement. We've done it for university students, and we've done it for kids. And we hope to be able to keep to that commitment of saying, at whatever stage you are on your financial journey, and we believe that's as soon as you hear a word like money, which could be when you're 5 or 6, we can talk to you in age-appropriate language about the importance of money. When we're talking about how people spend their money, Barack, one of the things we've told people is, as you learn to discipline yourself around a budget and how you allocate your funds, we've already talked about how a disciplined budget could be the key to being able to plan for a long-term goal like education. Teach your kids. I know we've said that many of us didn't get the education in school, but home is the first school. If you have children, and I know you have children, how much have you told them about money? When you do give them pocket money or offering at church, what are you telling them about where this money comes from? So one of the things I've done with my children is, on the occasion that I do go into a bank physically, I go in with them, and they're standing next to me so that they begin to get a concept. I know it doesn't quite dispel the myth that money comes from a bank and people are given money when you queue long enough.
Right.
But it's a start. Then you can begin to say, right now, I don't have enough of the money that you saw me getting from the bank to do A, B, C, or D. Start that conversation with a 6, 7, 8-year-old. Keep it age appropriate as they go into their teen years. By the time they are a young adult, 18, 19, I think they will be ahead of the pack.
Okay, interesting. All right. I guess fair response and fair answer. So I guess you have your first couple of jobs working in the UK. You come back here.
Yes.
What's your first job that you get here, and what are your sort of what are you making in terms of your salary, and what are your financial commitments at that point?
Testing my memory. My memory for unpleasant events as well. Because my first salary seemed little. I think my first salary was an allowance. So it wasn't enough to be called a salary. It was an allowance to get me to the office and back. It was about 6,000 shillings. It was 6,000 shillings. Adjusted for inflation, is still not much money. But that was when I was an intern. And as an intern in a stock brokerage, So my dalliance with investment started that early. And then I moved into a bank, into the credit department of a bank. And at that point in time, it was 30,000 shillings.
Okay.
So it was 30,000 shillings is what I remember planning with back then. Let's be upfront. I didn't have rent. I was still living at home. I wasn't having to spend too much money on anything. And yes, I walked to work a few more times than I'd like because it was the most practical thing to do.
Yeah. You walked to work out of practicality.
Kabisa.
Not because you couldn't afford it, because you
No,
wanted to save.
because I couldn't afford public transport.
Because you'd finished your money.
I'd finished my money. A common ailment of the salaried worker.
Right.
When the salary that you're getting doesn't cover 30 days. Because you see, you just started out. You're used to saying, the money's run out, please send me more money. Now here you've been given a salary. Even when I worked in university, it was like a weekly wage. So it was, if you worked, you got money. But here you're given a salary and then you have to figure out. So certainly the first, say 6 months, 12 months was rough because you realize if you don't allocate it well enough, it just doesn't stretch and you don't have good credit, you don't have a credit card. So when it comes down to it and you're still required in the office, you walk there.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I like that. I like that term, the ailment of a salaried worker.
It is.
Okay. So how long does it take you to get out of that? How long do you suffer this ailment, and what's the thing that happens that gets you out of it and that actually begins to get you to start budgeting properly, and I guess paying closer attention to the money that you're making and what you're spending?
Simple answer: more money. But it's complicated by this fact. And it's something I think more people need to be aware of. I have a friend, and I consider him very wise when it comes to matters money, who says that actually sometimes more money, and I know there's a song that says it, more money, more problems. True. But when you have more money, it may mask the fact that you are technically living beyond your means, but you've been able to cover up the shortfalls. You can afford to. But you're doing things you shouldn't be doing. You're not saving enough. You're not building up an emergency fund. So at the time, essentially, when I got my next pay rise, I was like, yeah, I'm never working again. I mean, for sure, because now I can do this, I can do that. And it sort of gave me a bit of a cushion. The kids that eventually came hadn't come, which is another thing we need to talk about, is plan. If you're hoping for kids, if God blesses you with children, there is no law yet written in Kenya that says you can't begin to save for their education before they're born. And yet what do you find? Most people will wait until the dudes show up to start saving for them. So I wasn't doing that. So I wasn't saving for the future. But because I was getting paid a little bit more, as I began to rise up the corporate ladder, which for me meant just within that organization, I started out in credit within an organization because of my law background. And then I moved into treasury, which literally felt like I was moving closer to the money. And there was a bit of a pay rise, and I was now in the markets and had become my home for the last 20 years. And yes, it did make a difference to the way I lived, the way I operated, the way I moved. And money lessons for life is, I think more people would make more use of those opportunities if they had the knowledge at the time.
Okay. What are the pay scales potentially for the different, I guess, progressions or different, or what do you call promotions that you get, that you've gotten through your career path, or for someone within that space? What kind of pay expectations would one have if they're going into? You said you moved from the treasury. You moved from the treasury into the markets now.
So I moved from credit documentation as well. So essentially, when you come in and you say you have a law degree, people kind of want to throw some kind of file at you.
Yeah.
Either it's a file, go to court, or this is a legal document, make sense of it. So I was involved in putting together the documentation that supports a loan application. So somebody comes in with a loan application, you need to put the documents together, and that's what I would do in credit documentation, and you need to keep a record of them. When I moved into treasury, essentially you are managing then the core funds of the bank, introducing the money market, a quite exciting world that I kind of got addicted to. Pay scales wise, I'm wondering how this will benefit today's young employee who expects to land on a huge salary. Yeah. But even back then, a 6-figure salary was kind of the promised land. So we're saying 100,000 shillings sort of said to you, I'm beginning to make real money.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that for at least the first 10, I'd say 5, 6 years of my employment. So I told you we started out on an allowance, went to about 30,000 shillings.
They got a bit of promotion.
I felt
Yeah.
the stars were aligning for me between 60 to 90,000. That's when you begin to think, I think I could do something meaningful in this life with this money.
But considering inflation, what would that figure be now?
Collins is our money.
He's our calculator guy.
Once again, let's go to simple measures. Okay,
Yeah.
inflation now is quite low, but once again, it's been high.
Yeah.
Even if you say 10%, I'd say today, you're talking, when I was at 60, 90, I'd put that at something like 120. 120 today. And I think 120 today is probably an entry salary in a medium-sized corporate and should allow you to take care of yourself as an individual if your dreams aren't too grand at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's thereabout, right? You've done the math. Oh, you've done. You're just accepting. You're just accepting what he's saying. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, what does it take, I guess, to make money in your space as a salaried career individual? You know, what are the skills that have allowed you to make money, and the skills that have allowed you to go up the corporate ladder to be the position that you're in now?
Yeah. One of the skills that a lot of people are talking about today that I think needs to be given even more prominence is the ability to learn. So learn how to learn. If I think I admire anything about different education systems, whether you talk about it locally or internationally, is have you picked up enough basic tools that you can learn? Because I think the challenge in life is if you get to the point where you are convinced or you're edged out of the learning discussion. Because at that point in time, you either begin to age or you become obsolete, and if it's earnings, your earnings reduce or stop altogether. So for me, I think the skill that really helped me, I've already told you my training was not in finance, and yet I quickly found myself working in the markets. And I must give a lot of credit to some of my early bosses. I had one, particularly when I went into treasury. I literally sat across his desk. It was a small treasury. This is not a small room, but it's about the size of this room. We're sitting across the desk from each other, and essentially it's an apprenticeship. You are listening to him negotiate rates on deposits, lend money as banks do in the money markets. And that's where my learning began. I was interested, I was passionate about it. So I think the skill that I have fallen back on repeatedly throughout my career as I've transitioned from credit documentation to working in treasury to moving into core stockbroking, which is why I moved after treasury, to then a stint in investment banking at the height of the IPO craze in the early 2000s, all the way to 2010, and finally into wealth management, investments, and financial education. It's been about learning. You're learning about the markets, you're learning about client investment trends, and so I'd say learning. The other thing is communication. One of the attractions for me about studying law is, and I hope you agree, one of the skills you do pick up studying law is the ability to be able to craft an argument, to take facts, find some sort of rationale, whether you call it the law, apply that law to the facts, and then communicate it in the interest of one goal or another. And I've used that quite a bit, just that interest and ability to learn what's relevant at the moment, and then to communicate it. I remember, Barack, when I drafted some of my early CVs, conscious of the fact that I did not have a finance background, and yet my CV would be read by people in finance, I said, I see myself as being able to come and demystify, simplify, and I'm hoping I still do that to date, complex financial ideas into language people can understand. So whether it's inflation, whether it's compounding, whether it's amortization, whatever it is, that you can break it down into a way that the investor understands. And I'd like to think that's some of the key skills I've relied on. I've had to train, and training is a part of it as well. But those are skills I think would be an asset to anybody looking to improve their value in the marketplace. And perhaps as I finish my answer there, we talk in the Financial Fitness Academy about that journey of creating value. We call it create and build. And I think it's evident to most people, but not all people, that we're no longer being compensated for our time. People are going to get compensated for their value. So investing in yourself, just never stop learning. pick up a new degree, do a short course, learn about AI, even if you're not in tech, just so you don't put yourself out of a conversation that might affect your ability to earn money and create wealth.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I want to ask you a question on that. The line you just given, that people are not being compensated for their time anymore; they're being compensated for their value. Are you able to unpack that a little in terms of what exactly that means? Because you're still paying for my time in one way or another. Yeah.
We're not to disagree with my host and get kicked off. You're sure. But I'm telling you that top performers in my field, wealth management, investments, insurance, in banking, people are going to ask, what did you bring in? What relationships can you carry for us? What can you sell, essentially? And once you're done selling, clock out, go play a round of golf, which probably helps you do what you're doing. It's a value discussion. The idea of coming and sitting at your desk and appearing to be busy or working to get through the working day is a much older concept. And I'm not going to even lump it on our parents' generation, because I think they too are working. It was a different time, a different discipline. But unfortunately, Barack, there are people who come into the workplace today believing, because I got into the interview, I got the job, I just need to report to work at 8 a.m., not leave before 5 a.m., and I'll get paid. And I think people in that space are finding themselves quite frustrated, and they're limiting their potential. These days, if you look at our own bank, you find the head of the consumer bank is an accountant, was a finance person, because they've been able to transfer that skill. They've been able to create value. If it was all about time, then you'd look for just time in the equation. So that's what I mean by value. What does Barack bring? What does Justin bring? That can be measured, that is unique, is not easy to find. And when you can figure out that equation, some would say you'll never work another day in your life, but you will be compensated for it, because people will see your value and they'll want to pay you for it.
Okay. I like that philosophy. I think I'll think about it a bit more. See if I have any other questions there. I want to move into another segment where I want to talk about your financial lows or potential financial lows. This might either be both personal or in a career space. What would you say would be your top 3 financially low moments in your life that you've experienced?
Yeah. Top 3. I think by the time we get to 3, this will have turned into a rather depressing discussion.
It's been pretty lively so far, so I think
let's keep it to 2, and I'm going to give it to you from 2 perspectives.
Okay. Is it the same issue from 2 perspectives?
It's not the same.
Oh, okay.
I guess there's a connection.
Okay.
There's a connection, but it's 2 different parties.
Okay.
And I'm going to say again, I am so privileged to have walked the journey of wealth creation with clients upon clients who over the years, and I must say, it is an experience that's hard to communicate. When somebody comes to you and bears their life to you, tells you their dreams, tells you their fears, tells you their hopes, and says, can you help me? It can give you a little bit of a big head as well, but it is an awesome responsibility to say, okay, I'm going to sit down with you and work out how you retire in peace, how you take care of your family and the like. And it speaks to one of the lows. The first low, like I said, is when you have grown up around people making money in an honest living, learning how money is made, worked in a bank, and you finally say to yourself, I think I've figured this thing out, which I said to myself around 2012, and I'm going to do it for myself. I think every Kenyan and their brother or sister is trying to be their own boss. I'm not quite sure why we're all trying to do that. I'm sure people will tell you it's not the easiest thing in the world, but I was of that persuasion as well. And I became my own boss for a brief 9 months. And in that 9 months, I kid you not, I lost money at a faster rate than, I'm trying to think of what else you can lose money at that rate doing. I mean, it was leaving through the door, the window, everywhere. Money was going. And it made me question. I mean, I'd been working in the financial markets for a bit. I thought I had gathered a few lessons. It felt a bit like a prodigal experience where you are squandering, even if it was mine or it was my money that I'd earned. I did feel in that moment I was making poor financial decisions. Yes, motivated by the desire to become financially independent and stand on my own 2 feet, be my own boss. But that was a low point because it made me realize I had failed the test of patience and I had failed to learn from other people's experiences. So I was going to have to learn from my own. Low point. Related to that, the markets are a theater for risk. And risk is a reality. There wouldn't be investment markets if there wasn't risk. And risk is not a bad or a good word. It just means things could go how you're expecting or they could go the other way. And back to those people who put their trust in us, sometimes for reasons beyond our control, the markets decide to do their own thing. And without talking about specific incidences, I've lived through a couple of global crises. I lived through the global financial crisis. What that means is there will be people who begin to face a catastrophe in their finances. And I think that's the other low point. A discussion that started with the hopes of we will do this, we will be able to get that then is brought down to earth by the reality that this person is facing a financial crisis of their own, particularly when they're older, is sobering. It's sobering. It can be a little bit depressing, especially when you feel, okay, what are your options? And so related points, one of a personal nature, and then one with the people who have been privileged to serve. And both are not things I would wish on an enemy.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible to have a life without any financial lows? Do you think it's possible to live a complete life without financial lows?
I do. I am a hope.
Is it complete?
Without financial lows?
Yeah.
Absolutely. What are you in search of, Barack? Is it
No,
pain? Absolutely.
No, I'm just wondering, you know how people say, I guess philosophies like, to know true happiness, you need to know true sadness, you need to know,
I'm not reading any of the books you're reading, man. I've had my challenges in life.
Yeah.
And
you think it's possible to just be a financial success, like from beginning, you're born, into wealth, whatever the case is, and through that, you become whatever. Even, for example, Prince Harry, I mean, he got his inheritance ripped away from him, and essentially was born with like a golden spoon in his hand, one way or another. So I'm wondering whether it is possible. It may be relative to where you're born
exactly.
and whatever you're experiencing, but
perspective.
Yeah.
Let's talk about different financial laws. Getting auctioned. Does everyone need to get auctioned to understand that you probably need to watch who you go into business with and honor your obligations? And I'm not judging people who've been auctioned. Absolutely not. You don't need to get auctioned. Do you need to be declared bankrupt to understand the value of money and sort of like pacing yourself? Not. Do those experiences place you on a different plane when it comes to the perspectives you would have on those incidences? They do. I am a firm believer, and I think that's why conversations like the ones you've been having on Financial Incorrect will do so much good. And I'm telling you, it's beyond what you and Colin can envisage. Because people will stumble on these podcasts and they'll be like, this guy is talking about me. Never met me, but he's talking about my situation. If only we would allow ourselves to learn from the experience of others. I've heard your guests in the past spoke about the isolation of the man in particular.
Yeah.
We have this whole idea that I need to figure it out by myself. I want to make my own mistakes. I want to own them and be able to say, these are my scars. I'm saying it makes for a pretty good script for a hero movie, but it's a dangerous way to live.
Yeah.
There is nothing new under the sun. Pandemics, global financial crisis, we've seen it all in the last 20 years. You now know that there will be events that come and threaten your life as well as your livelihood. You can plan for them. So what I'm saying is, I think if you take the time to calibrate your expectations, manage your outcomes. There's a book that's become quite popular of late, The Psychology of Money. And one of its takeaways is that the key to the success you're talking about, the key to that sense of fulfillment in the bigger scheme of things is not an abundance of possessions. It's actually contentment. And contentment speaks to saying, you kind of like calibrate and say, when is enough enough? When will I be okay? And I think if you have the privilege of being able to come to the point where you define what success is in realistic terms, not over optimistically, not pessimistically, but realistically, I think you stand a very good chance with some luck, and luck is part of the equation, of going through your life without too much drama. Save the drama for when you're actually looking for it, rather than have it be part of your money life. Drama and money is a dangerous mix. We see it in our field quite a bit, and it's not a pretty sight. So I think you can. I'm not judging those like myself who have gone through, have had your lows. I think they would only serve to inform others and yourself not to repeat them.
Okay. As we wrap up, my final question is from what you just said right now, actually. So do you feel like even with the products that you guys offer and with the Financially Fitness Academy, Financial Fit Academy, sorry, you in one way or another promote an ideology around being content and that being the true secret to, I guess, being at peace with whatever your financial space is?
We do. And even as we wrap up, and it's, like I said, I can't commend you enough for having the courage to encourage others to be open about their own journeys, because I think the more and more people realize that the journey to personal fulfillment when it comes to your money and investments isn't a shortcut, but that there's ins and outs, there's highs and lows, there's time put in, the better for it. We as a bank, the Standard Bank Group, are celebrating 162 years of operation on the continent. Now Africa's largest bank by assets. We've been operating in Kenya for over 100 years. And sometimes my clients, our customers, ask themselves, so what's the benefit of all this? You guys with your 162, you talked about, are we giving people products that match their anticipations when we say that Kenya is our home and we drive her growth? It all boils down to every story that we can become a part of. Every individual that we can take from a place of limited financial literacy to a place of financial fitness. And what does financial fitness look like? It means not only have we spent time with you talking about how you make your money, how you spend that money, how that money grows, how you give back. And we haven't talked a lot about giving back, but we're saying it's not just about making money, it's about who that money can benefit, whether it's future generations, whether it's your community, how you protect that money in Plan and Protect, which is one of the quadrants, as we call it, of the Financial Fitness Academy journey. When all is said and done, we hope to be able to produce or facilitate or midwife a financially fit individual who not only knows some of the things they should do, I shouldn't over leverage myself, I shouldn't be walking around with risks I haven't covered, but critically is able, is willing, has the capacity, the desire to do. And to do that, you need a financial partner who then has the wherewithal. Not every bank is going to be able to tell you can insure with us, you can invest with us, you can borrow from us, you can save with us, all competitively. And that, to the point of being a large integrated financial service organization, is what we're trying to do. So yes, we are trying to tell people that there is a life that you can live that meets your aspirations, meets the aspirations of your loved one, doesn't have you trying to keep up with Barack, who's half your age, or with Justin, who's too cool and is doing his own thing, but kind of lets you understand who is Kingori and like gets you in contact with the integrity of your own financial journey. I think for me, that's financial fitness kind of wrapped up all in one. It's a program we've been running for 7 years. I think it speaks to our commitment to introducing people to Stanbic Bank and how Stanbic Bank can help change your life for the better.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I think that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much for coming on Financially Incorrect. We hope that we will see a bit more of you a bit later to go deeper into a couple of stories that you haven't fully shared for us here today.
No,
but we'll definitely have you back on board at some point.
It would be my pleasure.
Yeah.
I am happy to say that I'm subscribed, so I will know how many episodes you have done before Stanbic comes back. Keep doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's important work. And like I said, you are impacting lives you may never come into contact with. Whatever birthed this dream made realize its objectives. And I think Kenya is on the right track, and you guys are doing a great job. Asante sana.
All right. Thanks for coming on. And thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys next Friday on the next episode of Financially Incorrect.